Hey guys, it's a new episode of Digital Coffee Marketing Brew. I hope you enjoyed the last episode. But this week, I actually have Robin with me, and he is the founder of Fearless Business, which he regularly speaks at various business events and best-selling author of several books, including Online Business Startup, Marketing Machine, and the recent popular release of Take Your Shot. And this week, we just kind of discuss like the freelancing environment, about how to offer value to what your services are providing and making sure you're trying to get the most money you can within a reasonable ask, and not really just always doing the like low ball, low cut, like $25 an hour type of thing, which will take you a ton of hours just to achieve 100K. So it was really insightful. I really enjoyed it. So I hope what you get out of this is how to know your value, how to position it to be a good value for you and your clients, and to make it a good ask with a reasonable time frame. All right, guys, let's get on. I hope you enjoy it. And please leave a comment on what was your favorite part and what did you learn out of it. All right, let's go to the episode.
Oh, thank you, Bright. Pleasure to be here.
And the first question, as all my guests, is: are you a coffee or tea drinker?
I'm very much a coffee drinker. Normally at least 2, sometimes 3 a day.
You would think if you're from, up there in Britain, you would like tea a little bit more, but the stereotype is not real for everybody.
No. Well, you can see that I'm not your stereotypical business coach either. A t-shirt and jeans for me, and a surfboard. That's my thing. And then, fresh cup of coffee every day.
You would actually fit in very well in California.
Well, maybe we need to move. I'll speak to Mrs. Waite later on, see whether she's up for it.
All right. I gave a brief sum of your expertise. Can you give our listeners a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So very potted history. So I ran a marketing agency from 2004 to 2016. So predominantly doing web design and branding. I had a sort of minor breakdown, I guess, around about sort of 2014, 15, and then ended up ultimately selling the agency in 2016. And you mentioned coffee already, but essentially I'm a sucker for coffee and cake. And so once I sold the agency, people got wind of my story and essentially bribed me with coffee and cake, and wanted to pick my brains and understand how they could build and sell their own agency or consulting business or whatever it was. So I did a bit of informal mentoring to begin with. Transpires, I actually was really good at this coaching and mentoring thing, and they started to get really good results. And in 2017, it became a thing. So I had enough sort of inbound noise coming at me that I founded Fearless Business, which is a business accelerator. I've stuck with working with grassroots businesses, sort of either one-person coaches, consultants, freelancers, or what I class as agency-sized businesses, like 2 to 10 people. And my jam is all about helping them with their pricing problems, essentially. So helping them to package up their offer, reprice it confidently, and then get out there and sort of sell it essentially to their customers. And in my view, the dream business with the clients we work with is double the income, but with half the clients. You get a bit more time back to go and jump on your surfboard, go on your bike, go down the gym, hang out with your wife and kids, and various other things like that.
Got you. And so your coaching framework emphasizes achieving business growth without relying on traditional marketing tactics. Can you share what inspired you to take this unconventional approach?
Yeah, so for the last sort of 20 years, I'd kind of practiced a lot of what everybody else, all the other gurus and experts tell you to do. And I'm not knocking any of the things which I'm about to share here, because actually they are still hyper relevant. It just will depend very much on the type of business you are. But social media in particular have been a bit of a nemesis of mine for a good few years. And I found myself doing sort of 20, 30 plus hours a week of social media and massive amount of effort in. And we did some really great stuff around sort of our podcast and repurposing content and blogging and short and long form videos and all of the things that everybody tells you to do. But for all of that effort in, it always felt like we weren't necessarily getting the just rewards for that on the back end in terms of sort of audience growth, engagement, and leads and various things like that. So late 2022, I figured that I would, it's that age old quote, isn't it? If you stop doing the same old thing and expecting, different results. So it's like, well, this is clearly isn't working how I want it to work. So we actually switched off social media entirely in 2022. And the start of 2023, I was like, well, what are we going to replace this with? And the question that kept on rolling around in my head was, well, if by the end, like this time next week, if I had to get 1,000 leads, or my little Dax and Twiggy's going to get it, like how would I do that? How would I go about doing that? And that one question completely changed the way that I now go about marketing my business. So, Brett, I guess that's a time for you to kind of dive in with questions and ask me what you need to ask in order to unpack the journey which I sort of went through at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we've all heard like do shorts, do video, do podcasts, do blogs, but I feel like it's all time consuming, and I feel like everybody's trying to do the same thing of whatever the past person has done, so it kind of dilutes the uniqueness of yourself. Plus, people follow the person, not really the quick edit cuts or the cool little graphics or whatever, which we try to focus on because I think it's the easiest thing to replace than the actual person that's behind the camera.
There's context, or just for some context as well. I think people don't realize that the marketing landscape has changed so dramatically over the last 20 years. And you think about that, that's like 2/3 of the internet age as we know it, that 2004, you could get some business cards printed off, get a basic website and a BNI networking membership. And it was easy to get clients back then. But there's a lot which has happened. There's kind of three big shifts which happened over the last 20 years, which are now influencing, I think, the ability for people to be able to kind of do traditional social media and things like that. So the first shift is that, these stats are loosely the same the world over, but I'm going to quote some UK statistics, and you'll have to extrapolate it out depending on your population size. But in the UK in 2004, there was 468,000 registered small businesses. Today, there's 6 million registered small businesses. So as the internet's kind of exploded and the speed of the internet's grown, you've seen this massive growth in terms of the ability for people to register a business. 12 times the number of people in your geographical area, your country, that you're now competing against. And not least because of the growth in the internet, you're actually competing against a global marketplace, which kind of has created this huge opportunity. It's never been a better time really to start a business, because you can reach anywhere globally. However, you're also then competing against however many hundreds of times more people in your industry. And it doesn't matter whether you're an accountant or a business coach or a podcast host or whatever it might be. Every industry is massively more competitive. And then you add into the mix in sort of the mid 2010s, like social media, which, it's not like back in sort of early 2010 when you just had LinkedIn and maybe YouTube. Now you've got 10 times the number of apps as well, social media apps that you could potentially be on. So I think people are just massively confused. And ultimately what I was seeing, and I was doing this myself, you kind of walk to the edge of the abyss. Imagine you're going to the edge of the Grand Canyon, and that's like your social media. And you've got all these people, business owners, just standing on the edge of the abyss, just shouting into the void, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. And of course, none of that gets heard. And of course, everybody's gravitated towards sort of social media over the last decade. So kind of this led me to kind of think, well, actually, is there a better way? And ultimately the goal for me was, how can I grow my audience? Because we're all taught, if you've got an audience, leverage the audience, engage with them, build their trust, book them onto sales calls and things like that. And it dawned on me that I just wasn't being particularly intentional. I've been trying to grow my audiences, but then there's lots of people out there who already have audiences that are 10,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers, or several million subscribers, who are in similar niches that probably, I like to think I'm an affable kind of guy, that if I did something of value for them, help them out, would they be open to sharing me on whatever their platform was in front of their audience, which they've pre-built? And I was really apprehensive actually to start off with, because I was a bit worried, well, what can I offer them? What can I, a bit of imposter kind of syndrome crops up. What can I offer somebody who's got 1 million subscribers on YouTube? And actually, I realized that probably most of these kind of influencers out there, these people that have got their businesses, taken them online, they started out with no followers, same as everybody else. And many of the people now what I did, I wrote down a hot list of all of the brands and people that I absolutely loved their vibe, loved their message. I like the sorts of clients which they sort of work with and the content they put out and things like that. And I started just making sure that, so it's a very hyper intentional list. And then I started showing up in their world. So I would go to the same events that they were going to or speaking at or sponsoring. I would make sure that I wouldn't just sit in the front row. I'd actually go and, I was a very introverted kind of guy back in, my marketing agency days, happy to hide behind a computer. But so I had to get over that hump and actually go and say hi to these people at these sort of events, take a selfie with them, shake their hand, congratulate them on the amazing work which they're doing, and making sure that I'm doing stuff to make their world a better place as well. And then lo and behold, like these opportunities, they would say, look, Rob, you've been so amazing, like helpful, like what can we do for you? And at that point, then you can sort of make your ask, because you've got their permission to be able to do that. And I don't know why. I mean, it takes a long time to obviously build people's trust up, but I was quite sort of scared initially of kind of overstepping the mark and asking for too much. And I've learned that like there's an art also to sort of making the ask. But ultimately, this kind of strategy of being intentional about the list and adding value and putting yourself in the same room as these people, it kind of came to a head sort of midway through 2023 when I finally got invited to be a guest on a podcast. So a guy called Ali Abdaal, who's like one of the leading productivity YouTubers. He's got 6 million subscribers. And we recorded in June 23, and then it eventually went live in August, a couple of months later. And I don't really know, I hadn't really planned, like, I didn't know what the sort of fallout of it was going to be, or what the upshot would be. But it resulted in 3,000 leads coming through in the subsequent 12 months for my humble little coaching practice. And again, on the podcast, I took the attitude, I just wanted to help people, because there's loads of people in Ali's audience who want to start businesses, need some tips. So we role played a few things. I did some coaching work with Ali, and we just talked through like pricing and products and the normal things. And just the comment feed in YouTube was just like, oh my God, it was just so valuable. There was none of this. Like, I just made a point of like, I didn't want to be like, hey, look at me, look how amazing I am. It's just like, add as much value as you possibly can do. And then at the end of it, again, like how could I add value to Ali's audience? And so we gave away, originally we were going to sign and gift 15 copies of one of my books to jointly sign it. Those went within 5 minutes of the episode going live on YouTube. It's literally just gone. And I thought, and they kept rolling in all of the requests for the book. So I just let it roll. And I think in the first 6 weeks, I think I shipped 700 or 800 physical copies of the book to all 4 corners of the globe. And it just completely made me realize that actually just not chasing immediate like quick wins on social versus going in for the long haul and building relationships with partners the right way is far more valuable, like in the lifespan of a business. And it's gone on. I've got a dream speaking gig happening next month using the same sort of tactics, just kind of getting to know the people behind the event. I've got several partnerships now with other organizations as a result of this as well, sort of associate coaching roles. So partnerships really, I suppose, in summary, is kind of where I feel it's at and where it's going in the future.
Got you. And so, I mean, you touched a little bit about it, but like speaking about like just adding the value and the ethical pricing of your services, what do you feel like charging by the hour is problematic for businesses, and what pricing strategies have worked for you and your clients?
Yeah, great question. So hourly rates, our biggest limitation is time. So again, it's why I was struggling with the social media side of things, time. And so by virtue of the fact that like a lot of the coaches, consultants, and freelancers that I work with are typically charging hourly rates. When you actually look at a structure of a business as a one-person business, you've got your client fulfillment, obviously the work you get paid for, but you've also then got admin and finance and sales and picking and dropping up the kids from school. And then, oh, lo and behold, they're ill. So you have to take the day off and everything else which goes along with it, marketing as well, which kind of mixes into it. So typically, like most people charging hourly and day rates, they've only got maybe 1.5 to 2 days a week where they're charging billable time. So I saw all these like super smart people, like brilliant minds, getting amazing results for their clients, but charging hourly rates. And so they're scratching their head at the end of the month going, well, I put all this effort in, where's the money and the reward? So ultimately what we try and do is, instead of focusing or encourage people, rather than focusing on the like what they do, instead to focus on the results that their clients get from what they do. And that typically, if you can articulate that value, that's far more valuable than whatever hourly rate work it is that you're doing. It also means that you can kind of focus in a heck of a lot more and kind of learn to do one thing really well for one specific type of client, because then you can build systems around it and you get repeatable outcomes for those clients because they're all kind of similar.
I always say pricing is the hardest part, because you have to figure out how much a client can pay, but also you have to figure out your own expertise and kind of like marry the two. I mean, for example, I went to Upwork, someone replied to me, "Oh, $25 per episode." And I was like, "Well, I can only do an hour max per episode, because every extra time I spend is less of that amount per episode." And I don't think they went with me, but I was kind of like, that's so little for what I would have to put in.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, and this I think is the biggest struggle for a lot of people, because you can look at what other people are charging, but economically that might not stack up for your business. Or based on, if you think that people can only charge a certain amount, well, again, you're limiting your earnings potential. But so say for example, like let's give you a practical example. So let's say a business owner wants to get to 100K, right? And they package up their offer, their service, or their products, and they sell them for $1,000. So all we do is we take the big number and divide it by the little number. So 100K divided by 1,000. So it means we've got to deliver 100 clients, 100 products or services to clients this year. And quite often when I do this basic calculation with people, their eyes pop out of their head, because all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I couldn't possibly deliver to 100 clients. Like, how many $25 an hour have you got to sell in order to hit 100K? A lot, right? So, that's 4,000 hours. I mean, that's more hours than probably you're able to sort of work in a year, for example, to get to 100K. I think the average number of hours is about 1,600 to 2,000 hours. So you're like way above your capacity. So a simple calculation would be, well, actually, we don't get out of bed for any less than $50 an hour if we are going to sell hourly rates. I prefer it though when we kind of package up the offer, right? So, and when you package up the offer, there are three constituent parts to it. So first and foremost, what is the dream outcome which you're delivering for your clients? How do you articulate that? The second one is, can we deliver that in a predetermined fixed period of time? And then the third one is, can we also then sell it for a fixed fee? So where you were saying there about the podcast episodes being $25, what it actually is the dream outcome that they're looking for out of that?
From my end, I was like, yeah, I can do everything you want, but it's going to be in this time frame, because like I said, in my mind, diminishing returns. If I go hour, fine, it's $25 an hour. If I go 2 hours, that like cuts it in half. And I'm like, that's not a good return for me. That's a good return for you, because you're saving money. But I mean, the problem with...
But what outcome was it that they wanted?
They just said that they were using Teams, which I told them not to. I said, I do not recommend Teams because of varying qualities of audio and video too, because you're dependent on your internet. Luckily with Squadcast and Riverside, they do save it locally and then they upload it to their servers. So you get a better connection. It's not always perfect. Nothing's perfect, but you get a better return on the actual quality. And so in my mind, I was like, I'll an hour max. And I said, but it really depends because of Teams. Like, I don't know how good the quality is going to be. And that's always the outcome of podcasting. If they use Zoom or Teams, I'm like, you're going to get a varied amount of quality, which makes it harder for the editor, and the editor's not going to fix everything. If it's so bad that you can't fix it, you could make it better, but you're not going to be able to fix everything. Even with AI, if it's a terrible quality it's garbly, you can barely hear, it's going to be a little bit better, but it's still going to be terrible.
And so the outcome of that, if you end up with a poor quality podcast, well, you're going to potentially lose subscribers. It's not even about getting less subscribers, but you're going to lose subscribers, and your views aren't going to be great. And then that's going to have a knock-on impact on the algorithm in iTunes, which means iTunes isn't going to push it, or Spotify or wherever it is. They're not going to push it out anymore. So you lose reach. So ultimately, like the dream outcome from, releasing a podcast, if it's high quality, is to get better engagement. If you've got decent calls to action in there, you could actually leverage your podcast to get leads in. Distribution. Can we actually help you to get your podcast distributed across more channels, not just the mainstream ones, but there's 1,000 different distribution channels out there. So actually, this isn't as simple as, hey, we're just going to edit your podcast. Like you can pay somebody $5 an hour in the Philippines if you just want an editor, right? But actually, if it's more about strategy and building a kick-ass podcast that's going to generate leads and income for your business, well, that's a completely different value proposition altogether. And I think that's where a lot of people really struggle to. They have prospects that come to them and say, "Can you do this for me?" And they don't question that; they just become order takers. And actually, if it was more of like a consultative sort of selling, where you're serving people by kind of like what you've done, actually, you've done it the right way. You've kind of said, "Well, yeah, I mean, we could do it that way, but it's going to be rubbish." And actually, I know there's a little part of you inside there which is like, I'd rather not work on that if it's going to be rubbish because I'm not helping you, I'm not serving you. So that's the ethical, moral, right way to come at it. But what if actually it wasn't just about the editing process or launching an episode? It's actually about everything else, which I said. And then what you can do is you can start to then package up. Maybe it's not just we'll edit one episode, but actually you buy a 16 pack of episodes from us, like 4 months worth of podcasts if you're doing weekly, or 8 weeks if you're doing twice a week. And the package is, I don't know, 6K for that. But we work on not just the edit, but we also help you figure out what the title is going to be. So it's SEO optimized, and we're going to help go through the description. We're going to tag it so it appears in the right places. We've got a few ways to amplify it on Spotify. And so you can build up this whole package. And now all of a sudden the person's like, so the podcast has this bigger like purpose behind it. It's not just editing podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, because podcast goes a million different ways. I mean, this audio could turn into 50 different things. And so, I mean, I try to help people, even if they don't want me to like be a freelancer for them. I still try to help people and be like, look, you probably need to use these instead of this because diminishing returns is unknown. If you use Teams, fine. I used it before I knew about this stuff, but that was like 4 or 5 years ago when Riverside and Squadcast kind of weren't as built up. So it was really the Wild West of it. But now, I mean, Descript, which Descript bought Squadcast, which we're actually using now. Riverside because they heavily market and they do a pretty good job. I mean, everybody knows about them. But yeah, I mean, it's the Wild West. Plus, people will be like, well, I can get cheaper on Philippines. I'm like, great, go for it. Because I said I'm not going to beat them because their like expenses are like extremely low to what my expenses are. So I cannot compete on that level.
Yeah. But that's just for like, so that's the low level sort of hourly rate type stuff. I forget. I have a feeling it was Perry Marshall or I know it was Perry Marshall. So he's got this wonderful book called Detox, Declutter, and Dominate. And in it, he talks about Renaissance time. Like, how do you go about charging for your time? How much is a specific task worth compared to another? And so he breaks it down so eloquently. He talks about like when you write down your to-do list, is it a $10 an hour task, $100 an hour task, $1,000 an hour task, or a $10,000 an hour task? And he says that what you should do is you should set your own hourly rate, like how much you feel you're worth, and then anything which is less than that, you outsource to somebody else because it's cheaper, it's more efficient, or to do it that way. But what's interesting then is like if you were to let's stick with the podcast theme here, right? So you've got the basic editing. Well, that's clearly like a $10 an hour task, potentially, or between 10 and say $50 an hour. $100 an hour task could be more so around that sort of lower level, like technical side of, titles, keywords, SEO optimization, distribution. Okay. But it's still a technical thing, like, admin task. But then your $1,000 task could actually be like podcast strategy. Like, why are we doing this? How can we create a lead machine from your podcast? How are you actually going to convert the leads you get from the podcast into paying clients so that you can actually derive a return on investment from this? I'm struggling to find a $10,000 an hour task in podcast. No, I've got one. Well, a $10,000 an hour task could be, I'm going to get you on School of Greatness, Diary of a CEO, and Ali Abdaal's Deep Dive. And then all of a sudden you can see that that's elevated if you can jump the queue and get onto some of these like, proper tier 1, top 100 sort of podcasts. So I think that's kind of quite a good, neat sort of framework to approach pricing at and your own internal value system. But I would encourage anybody who's kind of in the service space where you can to build up packages, but based on the results and outcomes your clients get versus what you do.
Yeah. And the funny part about like stats for like podcasting, if you have like 25 downloads like in 7 days, you're like the top 50%. And it goes up and up and up. So it's so low that a lot of marketers don't understand that you don't, yeah, it's nice to be in the top, like 0.001%, like the Joe Rogans, the Diary of a CEO, and all that other fun stuff. But there's also like podcasting is not like a blog. It's still not as saturated as people think because, well, people quit really easily. Like I think 3 episodes is the max a lot of times for most podcasts, and then they stop because they don't know the time it takes, the amount of understanding you have for each one of them. So it's an interesting thing for marketers and PR people to understand because I mean I've talked to them and be like, look at like the top 50% is only 25 episodes per 7 days.
I can well imagine that. I think one of the stats I read that to get into the top 1% of podcasters globally, you've got to have produced 20 episodes. And I remember actually, so I have the Fearless Business podcast as well, and there was a couple of things which happened. So we focused very heavily on guest interviews initially. And actually, it led to one of the biggest changes, but one of the most impactful changes for us further down the line. And we went to town on like the production level, like you said. We wanted to be good quality production. We made sure that the video was good, the audio was good. For our guests, we made sure that we were kind of repurposing the content, marketing it. This is kind of going back to that social media story I told about at the start. So I'd say for every episode, we probably put in about $500+ worth of production value into it. By episode 67, I was a bit done because, I mean, I try as a guest to try and do what I can to help my host and share it, and we build a page out on our website and we promote it as best we can. But the amount of guests who just don't do anything really, they expect you as the host to kind of promote it and whatnot. And I was close to quitting, and then that week I had two separate organizations who'd listened to my very first or second episode of the podcast, where I talked about something random I don't normally talk about, is growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And just something which I'm passionate about talking about, but I don't often talk about it. And one booked me for a 5K speaking gig, one booked me for a 9K speaking gig, and I was just about to give it up. And I think this is what a lot of people don't realize. It can take, some people get an instant return from doing something like podcasting. Some people is a slow burn, and it takes a while to build up that momentum and for that right one person to actually listen to it. We're now, I think we're at about 160 episodes. It's stalled again a little bit at the moment, but that's down to my own personal schedule. But again, we relaunched it, and we got to 100 episodes, and we did a whole sort of relaunch and 10 special episodes all pushed out at the same time. Went through and did a whole spring clean of the entire first 100 episodes. And again, because we'd gone through the learning of all of those 100 episodes, I was able to look at the titles and the structure of the seasons and episodes, renumber them, and go through, like, literally gave the whole thing a clean. And as a result of what I'd learned from those 100 episodes, we 4x the downloads from that point forward with future episodes. But you don't get that if you only do like 3 episodes or 7 episodes and then sort of give up. You're never going to see that return.
No, because I feel like it takes, usually the stat is always like 7 different touch points, and then someone either buys or follows or whatever. And I feel like you probably need to have at least 7 episodes for people to go like, okay, now I get where he's going. I may or may not like him. That's when they truly decide. So when you cut it off at 3, you still have 4 episodes left for people to actually decide. So,
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, from the social media side, like, how do you, you're vocal about avoiding social media as a growth strategy. So how do you do something different that's not a quote unquote growth strategy? Because I mean, we've all heard like growing is the thing that everybody says basically.
Yeah. Well, so Simon Sinek, and he wrote the book The Infinite Game, and then there was a video which I saw where he was kind of diving into it in a bit more detail, and he said that life and business is not about short-term wins and losses. The goal in life and business is to stay in life and business as long as you possibly can do. And so I love that quote because it a bit like when you're building wealth, you're taught when you're creating wealth to have multiple streams of income. Short-term wealth building strategies, mid-term and long-term wealth building strategies, so short, mid, and long. And I've learned it's the same with lead generation. So to make it clear, I'm not telling anybody not to do social media. I'm pro social media, especially when you're starting out as a business, because there's never been a better time to get online and start a business, because you do have access to all of these people globally. But for what I've learned though is that social media is like your short-term strategy, but you also need a mid and a long-term strategy in terms of like generating leads and inquiries for your business, and you need to be paying a dollar into the meter every day for each one of the three different things. So short term is very much like around social media, just raising awareness around your brand, connecting with people and networking and things like that. So it's definitely necessary, probably not to the volume we were doing it at. And what we missed was the mid and long term. So mid-term strategies are what I class as marketing assets. So they are kind of things which leave a digital blueprint, which sit out there on the internet ad infinitum. They might cost a bit of time or money to build, but then they're either free or very cheap to then deliver multiple times. So a book is a great example of a marketing asset, because you spend 8 to 12 months writing it, you publish it, and now you can print a copy for a couple of bucks a go, and you could be sending out 100 copies a week if you wanted to as part of your marketing strategy. So you got that midterm sort of commitment to write it, but then once it's there, like, you can send out as many books as you want to do. You don't have to be there like telling the same set of stories 100 times over each week necessarily. Podcast is a great midterm strategy, because this podcast leaves a digital footprint, and somebody could either search for it, they could be going through your episodes sequentially, somebody could recommend it, but other people will find it, and you don't have to be out there pushing it out there all of the time necessarily. YouTube channel is another great midterm marketing asset. So you can just produce a video each week, and I've got videos that I put on my YouTube channel 12 years ago that periodically and very random, they're totally cringeworthy. I can't stand watching them back, but people will still reach out to me having watched a video that I uploaded 12 years ago talking about something in my business. So we've got the short term and the midterm. And then the long term, and this is where it kind of everything came together for me, is the partnerships. So partnerships take more than a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes even longer than that, in order to build up that trust that you mentioned with that person before they will then know enough about you and trust you enough to put you in front of their audience. Because imagine if they, like Steve Bartlett on Diary of a CEO, is getting a bit of stick at the moment because I believe that it's a pay-to-pay platform now on DOAC, and they've had some slightly random people coming on as guests. And unfortunately, like, quite a number of them in the health space, for example, have been making some really rash sort of claims that are proven to be completely unjust. So as a podcast host, you've got to be careful who you put out on your platform, because, like, it's a reflection of yourself, if that makes sense. So you will, that's why it takes years in terms of the partnerships to build up that trust, where somebody says, yeah, I'm happy for you to get in front of my 6 million subscribers. But the thing is as well, you can't be building partnerships with like hundreds of different people. You've got to be really strategic, very hyper intentional about who it is that you have some alignment with, that you can build a partnership with. And I had my initial list of 10 people, and 3 of them have been cut because I started to follow them, started to dig into their content, maybe met them, and I was like, actually, I don't really vibe with them. I don't think there's a thing here that we can kind of actually build that relationship off. And so 3 new people make it onto the list. And so I'm constantly, I don't do much social media now because of the choice I made, but a lot of the social media content you'll see me do is mostly reposting other people's content. So, for example, like this podcast interview, that will get reposted when it comes out, various other things like that. Maybe some of the shorts, if we do those I'll repost those, but it's mostly reposting other content. Midterm strategies, I'm just all about writing the book, the YouTube channel, and podcast interviews. So, and I'm like, if I do a little bit each and every week in those areas, I know that my business is growing. I don't know when I'll get leads or engagement. I don't know when I'll get some clients from it, but I know that if I keep doing it, I will get clients eventually. And then partnerships, little and often, each and every day. And some stats for you to kind of back this up as well. So I mentioned I was doing sort of 30 plus hours doing social media. Well, my partnerships, I probably spend 2 to 3 hours a week by comparison. So like a tenth of the time. And with the occasional maybe trip to London, or I went to Dubai at the start of the year to do some networking with several people who are on my list. And then the other thing as well, and I love this stat because somebody asked me, well, how long did it take you to get those 3,000 leads doing it the old way? Because I'd love to know, because they thought I had a bigger following than perhaps I do. And I went back and looked. It took me 4.5 years doing it the old way of social media and the grind and the daily content and the repurposing to get 3,000 leads. And then I get 3,000 leads, off the back of 2.5 hour podcast interview. And it kind of blew my mind. So I was like, well, if I can spend 2-3 hours a week and eventually I only have to do like 1 or 2 of those podcasts a year of that sort of scale, if that, my business is, I don't want like a 7-figure scaling coaching business. I want a small practice where I can deliver remarkable value to the clients I get to work with. I can have a bit of fun in the process, so it's fulfilling. And I earn good money from the size of business which I've got. And so it means that I've got the time to be able to kind of invest into all of these relationships.
Got you. And if you could just give one fearless business tip to an entrepreneur looking to transform their business in the next year, what would it be?
So I think a lot of business owners have this, like they have this burning sort of either an idea or a person that they would love to partner up with, or just something that they've been wanting to do, have been bubbling away for months, maybe even years. And my invitation would be to quote Nike, JFDI. Because, well, I'm one of those people that I kind of have to know the outcome of the ideas. I can't sit on an idea. I have to know whether it's going to work or not. And either one of those options is fine. And I think people, when they've got these ideas and these people they want to meet and these partners they want to get kind of bubbling away, it's kind of, there's a bit of disappointment there, because they'll go to an event, they'll see the person who they want to guest on their podcast or write the forward for their book or any number of different things, speak on stage with, and then they'll stand at the back quietly, as an introvert, and then regret not having spoken to that person. I know what that feels like. So JFDI, whatever that thing is, go and do it.
That's difficult, but also good advice. Good advice.
I can go a bit deeper, actually, if it's okay. So I haven't shared this sort of widely, only with a certain few people, but in August, this just gone, I got diagnosed with a growth on my brainstem, so a brain tumor, basically. I'm very fortunate. It's the best kind of brain tumor you can get because it's benign and very slow growing, and probably won't give me any major trouble for a good few years. But it like in that, the only time I felt worse was when my dad passed away 13 years ago, getting this news. And it brought life very sharply into focus that I was actually putting a lot of stuff off. I'm like, oh, when I retire, I'll do X, or when the kids grow up, we'll go and travel, or making any number of excuses not to do the things that would move things forward. And then I realized that I didn't have a right to moan about my circumstances if I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. And so once I'd got over the initial shock of the news, I was like, right, I've got this newfound sort of, right, I'm going to do some stuff. And so even booking the flights and going out to Dubai, and my wife was a bit miffed because she was like, Rob, why didn't you invite me and the girls to go? And I was like, well, because I want to do this for me. Like, not in a selfish way, but I'm going to be out there doing business all week. This is something I need to do. I need the space. This is going to make things better all round for all of us. And I know not in the short term for those few days I'm out there, but so I need to do this for me. And actually, I think a lot of people put a lot of stuff off through guilt, and actually it's okay to focus on yourself and get out of your life and business what you want to get out of it.
Got you. And people listening to this podcast are wondering, where can they find you online to learn more?
So my YouTube channel is probably one of the best bets. Jump onto YouTube, search for Robin Waite with an E on the end of it, and then give us a little subscribe. But I've also got a gift for your listeners as well, Brett. A free signed copy of Take Your Shot, one of my best-selling books. If they go to fearless.biz/TYS for Take Your Shot, and pop a few details into there, I'll sign a copy and then send it out.
All right. Any final thoughts for listeners?
That's a good question. No, I think I shared it with the JFDI. Just get out there and do the thing.
All right. So thank you, Robin, for joining Digital Coffee Marketing Brew and sharing your knowledge on just business in general and marketing yourself and using less social media.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brett.
All right, guys, that's the end of the episode. As always, please subscribe to this podcast on anywhere you find podcasts. Also, leave a comment below on Spotify, YouTube, or anything like that about what was your favorite part about the episode and what did you learn about it. As always, please subscribe to it and join me next week as I talk with another great thought leader in the PR and marketing industry. All right, guys, stay safe and get excited for the next episodes because it's going to be a good one. And just learn how to bring value to yourself and to your clients. Later.